Last video about Dokkan rarities did really well, and since you guys found the topic interesting, I decided to make this video to ask, does Dokkan need a new rarity? LRs have become relatively normal parts of the game, and in my opinion, they've also somewhat lost the charm that made them special back when they first released. This is pretty normal since they've been releasing them for over 7-ish years now, and now that the game has been out for over 10 years, maybe it's time for something new. In this video, I want to talk about how a new rarity could be implemented into Dokkan and weighing the pros and cons of it. Subscribe if you're new, and let me know your opinions in the comments. Now, let's start with the first thing I want to talk about. How would a new rarity work and what are its benefits? Well, I feel like it would make anniversaries even more special. So think about how we get 3 LRs now instead of just, 2 LRs per part. So now we're getting 6 LRs in one anniversary. Now imagine if instead of having 6 LRs, we got 2 LRs and then we got 2 SLRs just being the placeholder name for a new rarity. I would say it's like a super legendary rare or something like that. You know what I mean, right? It's not. Anyways, it would also result in more quality over quantity units because as we noticed in the 10th anniversary, the Carnival LRs were definitely a lot weaker compared to what we were compared to the Dokkan Fest, because the Carnival LRs seemed like they were all just missing 1 or 2 things that could have made them great, and they seemed like they were kind of rushed a little bit. I don't know, it just feels like they were a lot weaker than Gogeta and Vegito, which is fair since Gogeta and Vegito is always the big moneymaker for them. But the only one that really stood the test of time was SSJ4 Goku. So I think if they just started making the anniversary where it's like 1 new rarity and then 1 regular LR, and those are like, the Carnival ones, people wouldn't be too mad because you'd have that 1 really good unit that lasts the whole year for sure, and everyone knows that, you want to for sure get that unit. The same way how Beast Gohan came out, everyone knew that was the unit you had to go after. So I don't think that's too crazy to say, considering there always is standout units anyways for every anniversary, and you always know who is the main character. Eventually it could become a GDC thing. That'd be pretty cool. One of the GDC units ends up being an SLR as well. I feel like that could be a good change, but honestly I wouldn't mind if they kept it just as an anniversary thing. I don't think that would be too far-fetched to have. And then basically that SLR unit would be so good that they would spend the rest of the year making units that would catch up to it, and it wouldn't be like power creep is so insane, because then the next year they would release another SLR during the anniversary, and then all the units that came out during the year are pretty much caught up to how powerful an SLR is. So honestly, that could be cool. I think it'd be a lot of fun to have 1 unit that for sure is like your standout MVP. You could build your team around them to just support them or stuff like that. And it would also change how the gameplay kind of works, because right now it's just like every unit on the team has to be goated. Every unit on the team has to do everything. Maybe if we had like an SLR, we could just focus on more varied strategies. We could have like units that are, supports, units that are just straight defense with a little bit of like orb changing or something. I don't know, like this is probably not the best ideas. I'm kind of just going off the top of my head right now, but we could completely change how the game is played, because we could move from this meta where every unit just has to be the best thing ever into a meta where it's like, hey, the SLR is so good, like if you just play around it with all kinds of like variety units, it could be the best thing ever. And then they could also have like a really OP leader skill or something. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any ideas for like a new rarity, but I think it'd be really cool. The other thing is, it's just something new for players to grind and stuff. I feel like the way they could do their awakening is by, instead of doing it like a medal farm, like how every unit has to go like, 35 of this medal, 12 of that, 14 of that, 77 medals. Instead of doing that, what they could do is make like a relatively hard event, like kind of like almost like a red zone or something like that. Like maybe not like a insanely hard blue zone or red zone that we've been getting recently, but I mean like an event that is at least kind of like that Broly boss rush or whatever, like that a movie boss's boss rush. I think that would be a really cool design, and then you only have to clear it like once or twice, maybe even 3 times, and you have all the medals you need to do it, and you also get rewarded well. Like it still gives you the 5 stones and whatnot, and it's still something cool to do, because I feel like most people's teams are already good enough like relatively soon to take on pretty tough events, and that Broly like movie boss's red zone boss rush stage isn't that hard if you think about it, and if like you don't even need the newest or best team to take it on. So this is just, I'm just spitballing ideas here. I don't really have like a concrete idea of what they should do for an SLR, but I feel like it would just be cool to have like a new rarity. Obviously that would probably have some downsides, which I will talk about in a second. Also, I'm playing the game at the same time as reading the script, so if I'm looking at the screen it's because I'm trying to like play too. But anyways, do we actually need a new rarity? I would probably say no. I feel like there's a lot more cons to having a new rarity than actually like the pros. I think the cons far outweigh the pros. So unfortunately, as cool as it would be, I don't think it's really worth it to add a new rarity. It wouldn't really work because if people got shafted on that banner, then they're kind of missing out for the whole year. I'm also just like countering my own ideas here. I don't know, because if you make a new rarity, it has to have some sort of specialty to it, like the same way like LRs weren't that crazy common when they came out, and you know, they had some special meaning. Every unit was like really special when it came out, but the meta was also completely different when LRs initially came out. So hard content wasn't anywhere near what it is. So making a new rarity would have to be like completely busted, because LRs were like a new upper echelon of strength. But you know, if you make this brand new rarity now, it's like, bro, is it just gonna body every single event? It would be way too hard to balance and make fair. So unfortunately, I don't think a good idea to add a new rarity now. It would also be hard for new players to get a grasp of it and really use the units to its full potential. It would take a lot of work. It's definitely more of a thing that would just be for veteran players and whales. So it would be way too hard for the regular average Joe or even new players to get their hands on this unit and use it to its full efficiency, because you know, you'd have to actually clear somewhat difficult events to get it. But once again, this is my design. It just makes the game even more complicated than it already is, and Dokkan for beginners is incredibly complicated. I kind of realized this when I tried to make my girlfriend play, and she was like utterly lost even with the help of the tutorial. So I don't know. It's also not really necessary to add a new rarity because the difference between a UR and a LR is already relatively well defined. And I think the final con that would also be really bad is that if they made a brand new rarity, it would also probably take focus away from the devs. What am I saying? It would also probably inadvertently make TURs less of a focus for devs, since LRs and SLRs would be the big money makers. So you know how like SSRs are not really a thing anymore. No one runs URs, but TURs and LRs are what everyone runs. I feel like, I know TURs would still be a thing, but they'd probably get pushed to the side for the sake of making more money and making these new LRs and SLRs, because they'd be the biggest hype units of the year. So, and then eventually as time progresses, we're just gonna have all sorts of SLRs coming out left, right, and center, and it's going to completely ruin the power balance of the game, and TURs are going to lose their place. So honestly, I don't really think we need a new rarity. I think it would be a lot of fun and it would be really cool, but I don't think we need a new rarity. And in the end, I think it would probably do more harm than it would do good for the game, unfortunately, especially for the part of the community that like aren't whales. But yeah, you know what, let me know down below what you guys think. This was a relatively poorly planned video. I was in a bit of a rush, so sorry if this isn't my usually well constructed video, but I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.